Hello, everyone. My name is Paul. Welcome back to the new news. I hope that everyone's having a fantastic day. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the week, and I hope that you, your family, and your friends are safe. And if not, I do hope that you find that safety and security in the very near future. There's a ton of stuff that has happened over the last 48 hours, and while some sectors may be a little bit more quiet than usual, as you can tell by tonight's headline, there has been quite some significant developments, especially in the Middle East tonight. So as we get ready to move here and into the news, keep in mind that all over the globe, there are a ton of people that are suffering as a result of a lot of these situations. And the whole point of this channel is to try and raise money to help people throughout the world by giving, you guys as the audience information about, different news stories and big topics of what's happening. A lot of these situations have quite an extensive amount of human suffering in them. Over 345 million people are in need of some kind of humanitarian aid, according to the World Food Program. So please be sure to check out the video description below. And this is why here at the New News, we're 100% charity driven. So we are not monetizing this for personal gain. We're never doing any kind of super chats. We're never doing any kind of any kind of merchandising or anything like that. So 70% or more of all the donations in the description do go directly to their programs, while 30% or less go to things such as salaries and administration's costs. And if you can't help out, if you can't, donate, that's okay. Trust me, I 100% understand. So please be sure to check out and try and help us support the channel, raise awareness, build this channel up as we have been doing. It really helps out, and it helps get the news out, get the word out, and brings more people here who can donate and help out people throughout the world. Now, if you are here live tonight, then you can, as I have already been engaging with a little bit here on and off, I am watching the live chat, so I do go through and answer questions that you may have regarding these topics to the very best of my ability. If you're new here, to give you a little bit of a background on myself, I served in the Marine Corps between 2016 and 2020. I served as an O-352 anti-tank missileman and a corporal with 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. I did 2 tours to the Middle East. My first tour to the Middle East, I ended up spending about a month and a half in the country of Kuwait before going forward deployed in the country of Syria for about 4.5 months, specifically in Al-Hasaka and Deir ez-Zor provinces. And then after that, I rotated home. Went back to the U.S., and then I ran an armor for about 2 years before redeploying as the Javelin team leader of Crisis Response Company between October of 2019 and March of 2020. There, I ended up spending most of my time in Kuwait until I went to the Baghdad Embassy Complex on New Year's of 2020, where I was one of the 100 Marines that responded as part of the Crisis Response Company, and I oversaw all anti-armor operations in the Baghdad Embassy Complex before about a month and a half later being rotated to Saudi Arabia and trained Saudi Arabian Marines getting ready to deploy to Yemen. I'm a subject matter expert in anti-armor warfare and armored doctrine. I'm also a fully cross-trained machine gunner, fully cross-trained rifleman, partially cross-trained radio operator, as well as a CLS or Combat Lifesaver Certified Marine, and I do have real-world experience providing aid to casualties. I'm also, of course, trained in small unit leadership tactics, but outside of that, I do have interest in other things such as geopolitics, human geography, and the likes. And so, if you would like to know more or have a question, please feel free to ask it. But I always implore that you, as a viewer, please do your own research, which is why every single map is available on our website for you guys to go and check out if you would like a starting point. Please don't take anyone's word at exactly face value for anything on the internet, folks. It's incredibly dangerous to do that. So please do your own research, regardless if I'm an expert or not. And so with that, we immediately move here and into the news of the night. So there's quite a bit. We'll go through Ukraine here, which is where we always start off the night before moving into the international news and into the Middle East, where the major topics of the night are ongoing. In the country of Ukraine, we have a couple of developments coming out of Kyiv tonight, the capital of the country. And the first update that we have is war crimes and child casualty updates. Quote, since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, Russian troops have committed more than 72,000 war crimes against Ukraine and its citizens. It's coming from Andriy Kostin, who is the Prosecutor General of Ukraine. And further, coming from the Prosecutor General's office, quote, since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, 465 Ukrainian children have died, 942 children have been injured. Most victims among children are from the Donetsk region. Moreover, 395 Ukrainian children were reported missing, and 16,226 were deported. At the same time, 10,659 Ukrainian children were found, with 308 being returned home. And we do get this from their official Twitter tonight, where we can look at the most recent release, which covers from the 17th until now. So far, 76,066 total crimes of aggression and war crimes, as well as 16,876 crimes against national security, as well as a follow-up regarding those numbers. Keep in mind that these child casualty numbers are not 100% correct, because they don't take into consideration places that are under very active hostilities. See, Triggered already jumping there with some stuff about what's happening there in Syria. Once again, we'll kind of get to that, and I'll kind of explain some things that I've been seeing and what we know versus what we know, and some things to be looking out for. We see a large-scale strikes across Ukraine. And quote, on the night of 23 and 24 March, Russian troops attacked Ukraine with missiles, air bombs, and Iranian Shahed drones. In particular, Ukrainian air defense forces shot down 2 Russian X-59 missiles in the Odessa region. In addition, 10 enemy Su-35 aircraft attacked the Sumy region with 10 guided air bombs. Russian forces also attacked Kryvyi Rih in the Dnipropetrovsk region with 5 Iranian Shahed drones. There are casualties coming from Yuri Nats, who is the spokesman of the Air Force Command of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Once again, we do have a follow-on coming from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine with some video footage of what happened there in the Sumy Oblast. And we just kind of get an overlook of all of that and the cleanup efforts right now, and rescue, recovery, and cleanup efforts. So this is from the aircraft attacks that occurred here in the Sumy region over the 23rd and 24th. Finally, another really big one, and one that I highly encourage you to read further, because there just wasn't enough time to do a super deep dive into this. In fact, I think these reports, should be videos in of themselves going over them. But the UN did release 2 additional official reports documenting what has been happening inside of Ukraine. These coming from the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and they are detailing mistreatment, torture, summary execution, and inhumane conditions for both POWs and civilians which are living under occupation for the Russian Federation. Once again, it was stated that Russia refused access to internment sites in occupied cities. However, despite all of that, it has also been very noted, and I think it should be very clearly stated, that Ukrainian forces also committed torture and forced disappearances and other crimes related to apprehension and detainment. It is also criticized that several Ukrainian laws, proposals, and executive acts which do not fall in line with UN treaties. And we have attached here both the UN report on POWs and non-combatants, and as well as the UNHCR's documentation on human rights. Both of those reports are listed here in their PDFs. They are only released in a PDF in English, according to the UN website. Quickly moving along here, we jump over here into the Donetsk Oblast, where we get our latest daily Donetsk update coming from Pavel Kolenko. This was released at 8 a.m. local time this morning, and quote, on March 23rd, number of victims of the Russian army in Donetsk Oblast increased by 3 killed, 5 injured. And we do take a look at that coming from, once again, Pavel Kolenko's official Twitter. 2 people were killed in Koshtanivka, as well as 2 being injured. An additional 1 dead and 1 injured in Chasiv Yar, 1 injured in Toretsk, and 1 injured in Avdiivka. So far, since the beginning of the invasion on February the 24th of 2022, 1,429 civilians have thus far been killed, with an additional 3,258 having been injured, at least according to Ukrainian sources. Now, this does not include areas that are currently under occupation, such as Volnovakha, the city of Donetsk itself, or Mariupol, where we know just from Maxar satellite imagery around Mariupol that tens of thousands of civilians have thus far been killed as a result of the siege, battle, and occupation of the city. The Battle of Bakhmut continues to rage. However, there is very limited information coming out, as there is a media blackout across the entirety of the front lines within that sector. And that sector runs about 23 miles coming from up here by Berestove, clear down to about Zaitsev here, to the south of Bakhmut. And the city of Bakhmut right now is very heavily embattled, and there's very little information, but what we do get is that there's very fierce combat there in the streets right now, a lot of urbanized combat ongoing, and there has been pretty significant fighting around the Azam plant, which is the industrial district here on the northern side. This is the Azam plant in the industrial district of Bakhmut. And that Russian forces are trying to push across the Bakhmutovka River, which kind of splits the city in two, running right down here. And we also seeing quite a bit of trench fighting on the outskirts of the city, specifically along the northern and southern flanks, which are definitely emphasize just how much of the Russians are trying to squeeze and encircle Ukrainian troops in this region. But we do have a couple of different bits of footage coming out showing, kind of documenting, one, the level of destruction of Bakhmut, which cannot be understated. The city is at this point, many of these buildings, like Mariupol, like Severodonetsk, and like many other towns across the entirety of the front and throughout the entire duration of the war, many of these are going to have to be completely demolished. The Battle of Bakhmut has been raging since at least June of last year, and I mean early June of last year. I think our first report on the Battle of Bakhmut was June the 4th as a channel. It does hold, despite some claims that it has fallen. There is no evidence. There's no concrete evidence that Bakhmut has actually fallen at this point. So we're not going to be changing the map. We don't have enough information to change the map and update anything. So at this point, we're saying officially that Bakhmut still is holding.
Бахмут. Это пизда. Сейчас пидоров насыпем, нахуй. Гондоны, сука. А зато ближче до підерів, їбаш. О.
Де? Отут важливо.
Нормально, блядь.
Це наш, походу, прямо хуяра.
О. 9-етаж.
Охуенно, красавчик. Вау, красный! Давай! Давай, давай, давай! Смазал!
So, Book of 40 came in and says, sources say it will take $200 billion to rebuild Ukraine. By the looks of it, it will be much higher. Right now, actually, sources are saying about $440 billion will be required to actually rebuild the country of Ukraine as of right now, according to their estimates. So that number is only going to be considerably higher as we continue through going through and seeing just how much destruction there was since 2014, and also since obviously the invasion, which has a lot more kinetic activity to it. So yeah, Konstantinivka ended up with at least 3 dead and as a result of strikes on a homeless shelter that was housing IDPs. They call them points of invincibility in Ukraine. At least 3 people were killed in the city of Konstantinivka after overnight strikes had impacted a local homeless shelter, which was harboring internally displaced people who had recently fled places such as Chasiv Yar and Bakhmut. It completely collapsed the wing. An additional 2 individuals were injured, but were rescued from the collapse of the collapsed ruins of the building. Additional rocket impacts ended up hitting around residential homes and high-rise apartments. Coming from Pavel Kolenko. If it would like to pop up here. Got some photos coming from this area here. You can see obviously damage. That's a high-rise apartment complex. Some of these residential homes. You can see landing right there, dead center in the road. We can see here more residential or a high-rise apartment complex. This is the actual homeless shelter that was struck.
Погибло 3 женщины. С 20 января они проживали в нашем центре. В эвакуацию категорически не хотели ехать. Это единственные 5 человек.
Popping up here once again if it would like to load, coming from the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs inside of Ukraine for the United Nations. They also stated, obviously civilians and civilian infrastructures are #not a target. And finally from Amina Zephyr, who also spoke on this. She's the first Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs for Ukraine. That's actually it for everything inside of Ukraine. Once again, a little bit more quiet than usual in some sectors. Looking forward to ask the question, would you rebuild Bakhmut? I wouldn't. Just the ordnance lying around would be immense. Well, yes, but no. You have to remember, first of all, these towns do technically still exist. The people did live there. Many of them fled. Many of them evacuated. And they would like to come back. And there's no reason to stop them necessarily. Second big point there is also that is pretty much the entirety of the country of Ukraine. If you just talk about, the places where these big battles happened and why you shouldn't go there, think about how much ordnance was dropped on Tokyo. Think about how much ordnance was dropped, literally atomic bomb blasts on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Think about how many thousands of tens of thousands of tons of bombs that were dropped on Berlin or on Aachen, or on any of the cities, in Europe during the Second World War. There's entire cities that are actually just memorials. The ruins of them are just memorials because of the atrocities that occurred there, and just because of the widespread amount of death. We talk about it, I'd say once about every 3 months, where they're finding a bomb in the United Kingdom that was dropped by German aircraft during the Blitz, and they have to defuse it. One of them, they were unsuccessful in doing so, and it detonated before they could actually defuse it, right there on the bank of the river. So unexploded ordnance is going to continue to be a problem, and it's a problem that you can't just ignore and just mark it and bypass. Eventually, these problems will have to be dealt with. Afghanistan is learning that with the amount of IEDs that were used. The rest of Europe has learned that after World War I and World War II, especially in France and Belgium, and there on the in parts of Germany and through Poland. And Ukraine's going to have to deal with that same situation. They've been dealing it with World War II ammunition, and they will continue to have to deal with this problem well and into the future. So it will be a lengthy problem. But yes, I would rebuild Bakhmut. It will suck. Is unfortunately going to remain dangerous for generations, but it will have to be done. So move here and into the international news. We come over to Paris, where there's been quite a bit of protests. Those protests do continue against the government, which has put out reforms regarding, through executive powers, put out reforms regarding the raising the retirement age from 62 to 64. Large-scale protests against the Macron government continue to take place here in France. According to various sources, about 1 million people took part in them thus far. During the rally, several buildings were stormed. The administration's building of the city of Bordeaux was also burned down. The clashes with police were violent, and 123 law enforcement officers have so far received injuries of varying severity, with many of the protesters which have not been as heavily documented. If I had to say, I would say that so there's several videos in that would probably be considered excessive force. Working our way down south here, Armenia and Azerbaijan are saying that there is no new escalation. Armenia Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan on Thursday announced that there will be peace treaty between Armenia and Azerbaijan based on joint official statements adopted at the highest level. The U.S. State Department's principal deputy spokesperson Vedant Patel, in response to the development, said the U.S. is encouraged by the progress made towards lasting sustainable peace in the South Caucasus. He said U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is engaged in facilitating peace discussions between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Going from Nikol Pashinyan here on his official Twitter. And coming from the U.S. Secretary of State's official spokesman. And now we get to the big news, the one that a lot of people have showed up for, and that is the situation that is currently developing inside of the country of Syria. The big topic of tonight is the fact that there have been several strikes that have been carried out over the last 48 hours, which resulted in casualties for American forces and coalition partners inside of Syria. We start here in Al-Hasaka, just outside of the city, but I pointed it here to the map. There is U.S. forces that are still around Al-Hasaka, the capital of the Al-Hasaka province of northeastern Syria. At least one U.S. contractor was killed, with 6 Americans having been injured. Iranian-backed militants used a suicide drone to attack the U.S. outpost near Al-Hasaka, Syria. The attack was successful and resulted in the death of 1 U.S. contractor. Additionally, 1 U.S. contractor was also injured, with also 5 additional U.S. service members. In retaliation, at 2:40 a.m. this morning, F-15Es conducted strikes, coordinated airstrikes on predetermined targets across the Deir ez-Zor area that struck at Iranian-backed groups. There has been no casualty estimates and no immediate battle damage assessments released, other than that they have assessed that the targets have been eliminated, according to the U.S. Department of Defense. This is coming from the official U.S. Central Command Twitter, and they did release the statement on here as well as on their website. This is coming from General Michael Eric Kurilla, who is the CENTCOM commander currently. Additionally, we'll watch the first part of this. This is the statement from the press briefing regarding the incident coming from the Pentagon.
Just a few things to deliver up top, and we'll get right to your questions here. So first of all, I'd like to take a moment to recap recent operations in the U.S. Central Command Area of Responsibility. Per our DoD statement last night, a U.S. contractor was killed yesterday and 5 U.S. service members and 1 additional U.S. contractor were wounded after a one-way unmanned aerial vehicle struck a maintenance facility on a coalition base near Hasaka in northeast Syria at approximately 1:38 p.m. local time. Secretary Austin, at the direction of President Biden, authorized U.S. Central Command forces to conduct precision strikes into eastern Syria against facilities used by groups affiliated with Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The airstrikes were conducted in response to yesterday's attack, as well as a series of recent attacks against coalition forces in Syria by groups affiliated with the IRGC. In terms of airstrike details, 2 U.S. Air Force F-15E fighter aircraft assigned to U.S. Air Force's Central and based in the CENTCOM area of responsibility struck 2 IRGC-affiliated facilities at approximately 7:40 p.m. Eastern Time, or 2:40 a.m. local. The facilities were located near Deir ez-Zor in eastern Syria, and we're continuing to assess the outcome of the strikes. Initial indications are that the facilities were destroyed. In regards to any militant casualties, we're still assessing.
And while this press briefing is about 18 minutes long, we're not going to watch the entirety of it. But that kind of gives you a gist, and they did release a couple of statements there that we have for further reading for you guys, including the actual news release and the press release, both from the U.S. Department of Defense. So, strikes go out about 2:40 a.m. local time this morning, and that is quickly followed by tonight's developments, and that is actually still a developing situation. It's very fluid. And so keep in mind that there may be things that I am saying now that could be corrected in the future. So I apologize if I unintentionally misinform anybody, but these situations, as someone who has been there, these situations are very fluid and very difficult to deal with. That leads us immediately into tonight with these strikes and the retaliation. Further strikes were carried out tonight by the Iranian-backed forces inside of Syria. The Mission Support Site, or MSS Green Village, which is located near the Conoco gas fields and the Umwat oil fields, depending on how you wish to write or pronounce it. which are located here along the middle Euphrates River Valley, came under a rocket attack. The U.S. has currently reported that about 10 rockets were fired by Iranian-backed groups in retaliations for the airstrikes which were carried out. The rockets missed the outpost but struck a civilian home, injuring 2 women and 2 children. As a result, there were no coalition or partner casualties and no damage to the outpost. This is the initial information that was coming out at the time that we had written this, which is about, I'd say, about 2 hours ago. And this is the official statement coming from the U.S. Department, from the U.S. Central Command, once again from their official Twitter. As you can see here, they talk about a green mission support site, Green Village, was attacked about 8:05 local time this morning. We do have some videos reported of additional strikes that have been coming in. So these are strikes that are reportedly being carried out near the bases here in Deir ez-Zor. These could include mission support site Conoco, which is located at the Conoco gas plants, also along this exact same area. This is the Conoco site is located near Kasham. If you remember when 300 Russian contractors on February the 7th and 8th of 2018 attacked U.S. forces and were wiped out off the face of the earth, that would be the Conoco gas plant area. This would be MSS support site Conoco near Kasham. Green Village is a support site also co-located nearby that does support. They do conjoining fires and operations together there. And they're supported by larger sites to the north. But these are reportedly rocket strikes by Iranian forces on these coalition places from the point of either locals or these IRGC forces themselves. See the flashes there lighting up the night sky. Okay, so what you heard in there, you could hear obviously jet aircraft, and then you obviously heard a helicopter. Couldn't really see much because it is absolutely pitch black out there in the middle of the desert. It's a really eerie thing, especially when you're on board an aircraft. So, if you missed the very beginning of the video, so for those that may be just joining us, and I'm going to kind of go through and explain from my experiences about kind of what's happening and why it's happening and a little bit of background for you guys. But so for those that may be just joining us and missed the intro to this, so I was in the Marine Corps between 2016 and 2020, and my first deployment, I actually spent 4.5 months in Syria, specifically Deir ez-Zor and Al-Asaka provinces. This is between October of 2017 through March of 2018, where we were fighting the Islamic State as part of Operation Inherent Resolve, Crisis Response Central Command. And I spent a lot of my time specifically down here by the Merv and pretty much up by Firebase Al-Shaddadi, which is what I'm getting ready to tie into. You're hearing jet aircraft, and there's quite a lot of jet aircraft that are operating in here. They do 8-hour continuous missions on a rotation. The U.S. forces do. These aircraft usually like to fly out of places either coming out of Iraq or out of Kuwait. They'll fly 8-hour continuous missions over the middle Euphrates River Valley, which is the deconfliction zone. Pro-Assad militants and the Russians are here pretty much to the south. That was at the time. It appears that they're a little bit more mixed now. And then to the north, you have coalition partners, the SDF, the United Kingdom, the United States, and all these coalition partners that are supporting the SDF. And that kind of gives you a lay of the land of the situation. Throughout Syria, you have several main sites. One site is located up here in Al-Hasaka. This is where there is an airfield that is accessible for large aircraft from the United States, and all this area should be pretty much under the control of the Syrian Democratic Forces, or the SDF, mostly comprised of the YPG and YPJ, which are Kurdish fighters, the YPK. not the PKK, the YPK. They're two separate entities. Firebase Shadadi, or FBS, is located here in Ashadadi, which is further to the south. This is kind of serves as like a regional head. And you actually can zoom in here, right here on Google Maps, so you can actually look at the firebase. You heard aircraft, those jet aircraft are the part of the 8-hour mission rotations. If U.S. forces inside of Syria request immediate aid from aircraft and air assets, those aircraft are already on standby and will be diverted after calling the hotline with the Russians, the Assad regime, to make sure that it's not their forces, to try and deconflict and de-escalate tensions there. Basically, not trying to start World War III, we're just trying to make the bad guys stop shooting at us. As you can see here laying on the tarmac, there is an entire section of aircraft, an air rotary wing that came in. There weren't that many aircraft when I was there. These are more recent photos than when I was there. But they had just built these pads. There is a group of H-64 Apache helicopters, as well as a medical evacuation and transport aircraft, Black Hawk helicopters that are located there at the site, as well as ground QRF forces. Overall, inside of Syria, there's about 900 American troops and contractors between all of the different support sites. There are several different ones. They go all up and down this kind of riverbed here that kind of flows between Al-Hasaka and Shadadi and to the Merv. The two biggest ones that have the most contention are located at the Conoco gas plants and the Omar oil fields. These are the Green Village and Conoco that you hear about. They're reported in the in all of these different press briefings. They're not particularly large. They're just called mission support sites, or FLOTs, forward lines of troops. And at these locations, it's pretty, when we had been there, these sites hadn't been so well established. They're a little bit more established now. And so they have a little bit more built up around them. But some of these sites, they were flat pieces of desert when we got there. We literally took bulldozers and put up berms and HESCO barriers and sea wire and dug trenches and stuff when I was there. So some of these sites are definitely more established than they used to be and a little bit more extensive. But as we come down here, these rocket attacks are, I get the question here of, what U.S. forces do we have in Syria? Don't hear much. Is it a ballistic missile strike or grad style? So it is. So the first one, the forces that we have, about 900. They're mostly comprised of special operations forces, Green Berets, Navy SEALs, the PJs, and stuff like that. They're not really, and other special operations forces that I probably can't talk about. Trying to walk a fine line here between being informative and trying to make stuff. And so the point of these forces being here is they're supporting the SDF. They're doing advise and assist, and they're pinpointing targets. And they are, in some cases, they are more kinetic, meaning that they go out and they do kick in doors and take down the bad guys. This is how a lot of these high-level leaders are getting attacked and how they're getting captured or killed inside of Syria, is special operations forces going out and raiding these locations. I got to, obviously be part of some of these during my time there. Very interesting ordeal to deal with, especially given the weird circumstances of the country. And the country is very fragmented. There's about, I would say, about 40 separate groups that have been fighting here. The situation can be pretty tense, even with the SDF at times. I would assume even more so since the 2020 withdrawal of a majority of forces that we had. Now getting to Demise FPS's question of a ballistic missile strike or grad style. These are going to be more grad style, or actually artillery batteries. They do actually have real, actual towed artillery batteries, and even 2S1s and 2S3s. Those are older self-propelled Soviet artillery guns, essentially. They will use these to engage. Most of the time, you're talking about rocket attacks. So you're talking about quadcopter drones that are going to be dropping hand grenades and mortar rounds and stuff like that. Similar stuff to what you see in Ukraine. That was really the big question and threat that was arising when I was there, because it was very new to the scene, but it was very prevalent. The second one is going to be rocket attacks. These are going to be standalone things. They're going to literally build very simple tubes, and they're going to put rockets in them. They're going to point them in the general direction of wherever this base is within this kind of a range. And they're going to do some very basic math and figure out that if they point it at this angle and in this direction, they should hit something this far away. And they're kind of guesstimating, which is why they miss a lot. But over time, as they miss, what they're doing is they're bracketing. So they'll shoot high, and then they'll shoot low, and then they'll shoot left, and then they'll shoot right, and then they'll shoot a little bit less high, and then they'll shoot a little bit less low, and a little bit less left, and a little bit less right, until eventually they actually lock those in on target. It's called bracketing. It's a method of trying to get artillery or mortars or rockets onto a point. It's kind of like walking it. If you've ever seen movies where they are, you have one artillery strike here, and then they say adjust it to this, and then they have another artillery strike here, and then they say adjust it to this, and then the next artillery strike's here, and then it's probably on target or something. Or it's on target by the second one because they are just good like that. Another question from Bookham 40. Are there QRFs just in case? Yes. There is so many things that the U.S. can bring to bear. In fact, the ramifications for these strikes are probably going to be quite severe for what has just happened and is currently happening. Those strikes are going to probably look at things like probably more additional strikes on different targets. From aircraft and drones, and probably AC-130 gunships, because we do keep those on standby as well. For QRF, during the Battle of Kasham, this is the incident with the Russians, as part of the QRF force. The QRF forces are stationed mostly at some of these larger sites. So he's spoken for. He's talking about bracketing. So QRF teams are located all throughout the region. There are internal QRF teams. It's not like there's just one thing. Like if a group of guys so if you have 20 guys at a base, right, and you send a team of 4 out, there will be another team of 4 in a vehicle that is on standby to QRF, or Quick Reaction Force. And that will be here at Conoco or Green Village or one of these sites. And then if they need QRF, if the whole base becomes attacked, then there's QRF in, say, Ashidati, and then there's QRF in Al-Hasaka, and there's QRF, there. On top of that, there's QRF teams, obviously, if you go to Al-Assad Air Base here in Iraq. Or if that doesn't work, you have the Crisis Response Company here in Kuwait that can be brought in. And then on top of that, so you can have the whole company make the 4-hour flight journey from Kuwait to the site and land an entire company of troops in a rapid deployment, ready to go. Literally get the word, jump on the bird, or get the word, get the ammo, jump on the bird, fly mid air refuel, get in, drop, form the perimeter, and go. It is very quick. It is very intense to deal with. Being crisis response kind of sucks, but there is constantly a rotation of people that are on the flight line. They take rotations and they sit on the flight line and they just wait. There's an entire platoon of dudes that are waiting on the flight line, and all they have to do is literally get their gear and jump on the bird while the rest of the company is getting their ammo and getting ready to come to the flight line. It is incredibly fast, unbelievably fast. And even if that isn't enough, if they still need more, if the situation really escalates into a really big regional thing, and this isn't enough, then you also have like the 82nd Airborne, which is actually, they have an entire sections of the 82nd Airborne that all they do is, you saw this in 2020, they will respond to a crisis. When the Baghdad embassy was attacked, the Crisis Response Company went into Baghdad. We dropped off there. We secured the embassy. The 82nd Airborne was rotated into Kuwait because it was looking like it was going to escalate into a larger thing. And then on top of that, there's also the MEUs, or Marine Expeditionary Units, that are sitting off the Mediterranean coast that are a complete MAGTF. They can do any wide range of missions that are required of them, from everything from setting up artillery batteries in the middle of nowhere to providing air support, ground forces, QRF, humanitarian aid support, whatever. Anything and everything. They're sitting off the coast of the Mediterranean. So there's a lot going on there. And there's other forces in other countries too. I just don't either not been there enough to talk about it, or I don't think it's probably good to talk about it. But there's a lot of things that you can do. There's a lot of assets available, and there's a lot more that the U.S. probably could have done, but restrained to not do so. You're not trying to escalate the situation. If you are attacked and you do take casualties or something, you're going to see something that is very similar in scale, maybe a little bit larger, to send the warning of you probably don't want to keep doing that. Taking out key leadership, key infrastructure, that kind of thing. But it's going to be very proportional. That's the U.S. kind of response, is proportional response. Which is still, it feels like the hand of God is coming down upon you. But it's, it's proportional. It's not a full-scale, like, invasion or something. Now, why? Iran is constantly trying to destabilize the region. When I was in Syria at the time, this is 2017, 2018, there was an estimated 70,000 Iranian fighters. And they are there. They're funneled from Iran. They are then funneled through Iran across the M1, which is down here in the south, go up, clear up through Baghdad, and they cut across over from Jordan and into the southern part of Syria. This is the pro-Assad area. This is the area where they have some friends, if you haven't noticed, Iran and Russia, and Iran and Syria, and how their relationship works geopolitically. They have friends down here, and so they can operate a lot more freely, and they funnel weapons and supplies through here. This is why there's troops inside of Jordan, and why there's troops inside of Iraq, on top of just the Islamic State. Then, on top of that, I've seen, obviously, there's an individual in here earlier, Triggered, I don't know if you're still in here, he said at least a dozen U.S. soldiers killed tonight. Not true. In fact, well, I shouldn't say it's not true. I shouldn't say it's not true. I shouldn't say it is or is not true. Because what is happening now is you are not going to find accurate information on casualties that is not explicitly stated by the United States government. You will not find it. There is no CNN or Fox or CNBC or any Telegram, Twitter, or any report like that that is going to give you accurate American casualties. At all. It will never happen from any coalition partner. It will not happen. The only valid information that you can have on any of these situations from the American perspective and their assessment on casualties is from the U.S. Central Command and the U.S. Department of Defense, the Department of State, and the White House. And the reason for that is because when the absolute minute that it is found out that there is an American casualty, those MoraleSat computers that allow you to have access to the internet, which isn't all that great, so it's hard enough to send a text message through like WhatsApp in Syria, let alone like watch a YouTube video or something. It's terrible. 6 guys running off of like a 2008 laptop hotspot Wi-Fi. Okay, it's impossible to use for anything. So it's not that great to begin with to get like Twitter information and stuff out. Secondly, the minute that it is found out we had this happen, one of the guys in my platoon unfortunately became a casualty. Is the only one that we had that was within the unit. They literally, my company commander and first sergeant barged into the room and immediately unplugged the MoraleSat computer. It's called, and took it. It's called going into a quote-unquote river city. River city means that all outside communication with the world is cut off. You will not have Wi-Fi. You will not have signal. You will not have anything. The only things that will still be running on any kind of a network are anything that is running on like the secret networks, top secret networks, those actual confidential communications lines that are built for military purposes only, for communicating with the commands and everything else, and assets. So that's the only networks that will be available. There will be no communication with the outside world. It is literally to the minute. Casualty happens, your internet is shut off. It's insane. And so there is no U.S. That is because that way, anybody who is killed in action, wounded in action, or what have you, their family can be properly informed of them becoming a casualty, before they see it on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever. That is one of the reasons why we do it. Another reason is because of incidents like this. You don't want to have a bunch of random information going out that doesn't need to be going out, because the situation is fluid, the situation is not clear, and there are very few people, even at the high level, no one has the full picture. They're trying to get the full picture and make judgments, the best judgments they can on 80% solutions of understanding what's going on. So you're not going to find an accurate, at least a dozen U.S. soldiers killed tonight or anything like that. There's no way you could know. There's no way we will know. And that is going at a minimum. River City will occur at a minimum of 24 hours. So the minute that there is a casualty or a major incident, River City goes into effect, and for at least a minimum of 24 hours, there will continue to be River City. There will be no communication. That will continually get extended as these incidents continue. So someone was just killed, you found out from a statement, but you will not hear anything from troops in Al-Hasaka at all. You will not see anything from Al-Hasaka. There's nothing from the SDF on it. You will not see anything related to the incident from any troops that are actually in Syria, because you can't. They're not allowed to. Physically unable to. Same thing with what's happening there in Deir ez-Zor. That is probably extended it. If there are casualties, which there are coming in lately, there are mixed reports of casualties as a result of the rocket strikes that are currently ongoing. And that's coming from some major news sources, so questionable how accurate that is, because I haven't seen it from the U.S. Department of Defense yet. They end up, they are currently under period. It's within that 24-hour period anyway, but these incidents, that 100% has now been extended River City wise. Bookham 40 asks, okay, so why do we call it River City? When I first got to Kuwait, I had to ask that question. I didn't know about what that was. People just kept saying, hey, they're in River City. I was like, oh, River City must be like a forward code word for a location. I had no idea what it meant, and that was the purpose. It was like, hey, yeah, they're in a media blackout. Like, they're not, like, River City isn't a place, like, it's a thing. I was like, oh, okay. I have no idea why it's called River City. It's just kind of, at the time, it's probably called something else now. But at the time, that was the code word. That was the brevity code. The code word for media blackout was called River City. Going into River City. Because knowing anyone that goes into River City can't talk to anybody else. That was the kind of the whole ideology behind it. It's kind of interesting. So it's what it was at my time. Keep in mind, brevity codes and these code words do change operationally over time. So it probably has changed, but I still use it because that's what I know. And just so we can see kind of what's happening here, I'm going to see, what do we got here? U.S. or we'll do CENTCOM. Does the U.S. Central Command have anything else? The United States Central Command has not released anything else regarding the attack so far. What about the SDF? Syrian Democratic Forces. They military haven't released anything regarding this. Yep, I'm not seeing anything from them either. So, not a lot to go on right now. What do we got here? Now, it does look like so from what I'm finding out here, it looks like that there are aircraft that could be up that currently have their transponders on but aren't running any call signs. So from some of these groups, it looks like that there is... Actually, I wonder... We can do flight radar 24. See if we can find some of these flights for you. Yeah, sure. Continue. All right. Let's see what we got. Do we got any military aircraft right now? Sorry, I'm kind of trying to figure out if we can find something. These are probably Air Emirates. Yeah, they are. Sometimes they'll be running transponders, sometimes they won't. No, that's not what I wanted. That's still not what I wanted. It would appear that these aircraft may have turned off their transponders now. They may have realized that they have their transponders on operationally. It is looking like it. So I'll go back to Twitter here so I could show you what I was talking about. I apologize, guys. I'm kind of going off on a little bit of a tangent, but it's kind of a important tangent. So this is one of the OSINT accounts that we kind of follow and use from time to time because they have good footage. And they were using their flight tracker they found a looks like a KC-135R Strato tanker that was over southern Iraq. Those would be used for refueling aircraft. And then additionally, they found a E11A, which is electronic surveillance aircraft and observation aircraft. They can track impacts. They probably also have HIMARS radars ongoing there on the ground, being able to track what's happening here within the region. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now, from the best I can tell. But there is not a lot of other information coming out right now regarding the situation. So I apologize if that's pretty much all I got on the whole Syria thing. There just isn't enough information to really go on, but I hope that you guys at least have kind of a background, a little bit of understanding of what's happening, why there isn't so much information, what has happened over the last 48 hours, and that kind of stuff. It's very weird and very fluid situation. I'm sure that there will be more information coming out in the next 24 hours. But with that, we're going to go ahead and move on. And that actually brings us to the last hard-hitting point of the night, as long as no one else has any questions. Down here in Cameroon, in northern Cameroon, the Islamic State ended up killing at least 3 using an IED. Islamic State militants used IEDs to blow up an army pickup truck in northern Cameroon, killing at least 3 soldiers and injuring an additional 7. Coming from the Islamic State statement there. And there is what is left of that truck. Not particularly much. But that wraps up the hard-hitting news of the night. And we actually jump up here and into Munich for something very, very, very German. Very German, in fact. A German monk ended up creating the world's first powdered beer. A monastic brewery near Munich says it created the first powdered beer. Just add water and it'll froth up, complete with foamy head and full flavor. The result promises massive savings on transport because it can be shipped at 10% of the weight. Klotz Brewery, Neuzel, worked together with technology partners and used funding from BMW to create its first powdered product, a dextrin-rich, zero-alcohol beer, which has been brewed using conventional methods, then processed and prepared into a water-soluble beer powder/granulate. If you'd like some more information on that, you can go and check out their website. Don't be afraid. Go ahead and buy yourself some powdered beer. It is alcohol-free. Pretty wild in the realm of things. But that's actually it for tonight. That's once again some big developments in when it comes to certain things, but not as much as I actually initially thought there was going to be. So a little bit kind of strange. Usually though, no news is good news, and what news we have is kind of a big deal right now. So we'll see how everything goes. We'll see how the developments take place. In the meantime, obviously, a lot of this stuff is affecting, the war in Ukraine is affecting a lot of people. Terrorism there in Africa is affecting a lot of people. The situations there in France are kind of starting to get rather bad with the protests. So a lot of human suffering overall. And so I hope that you guys, have a better understanding or more well-informed of what's happening in the world around you. And I hope that you guys will take that and, go down and to the video description, check out the wonderful organizations that are down there. There's a lot of different organizations down there that are doing a lot of great things all over the world. Africa, the Middle East, Europe, especially in Ukraine and in the areas around Ukraine, Southeast Asia. So please go and check them out. 70% or more of the donations that they receive go directly to their programs, with 30% or less going to things like salaries and administration's costs. And once again, if you can't donate, it always helps to give us those likes and subscribes, commenting on our stuff, sharing this amongst your friends and family. It helps us grow the channel. It helps us be able to do this and continue doing this and do more good in the world. We want to have as much impact in the world as we can for a good reason, be able to help as many people as we can, and we can only do that through you guys. So thank you very much for the support that you've given us, even more so for the organizations in the description. In the meantime, I hope that you, your family, and your friends are safe, and if not, I do hope that you find that safety and security in the very near future. And I do hope that you guys will be back on Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central, for our 72 hours of news and review covering the topics over the last 72 hours, of course, and over the weekend. And in the meantime, have a wonderful weekend. Please be safe, and I hope to see you then. My name is Paul from the New News, and have a fantastic rest of your weekend, everybody. Bye now.
Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стоять до волновахи і чудо. всіх вас звать до сатани. Тисячі вже полягло, і все більше швекуйло, то для них нема нічого, крім труни. Gone home, Russian soldiers, gone home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Від стрия до волновахи і чутно кличе, дітям нахуй, тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО.
Вызволять пришел, братишка, ну привет. На моей земле тебе один ответ. Нашим людям с кирпичом, даже танки и бочок, вам не взять нас и за 100 000 лет.
Gone home, Russian soldiers, gone home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Від стрия до волновахи і чутно кличе, дітям нахуй, тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО.
Mr. Putin, on behalf of all our guys, no one's scared of your nuclear device. You can take your double lemon, shove it up your wrinkled butt. Oh, we'll come and help you fit it in your skull.
Gone home, Russian soldiers, gone home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Від стрия до волновахи і чутно кличе, дітям нахуй, тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Gone home, Russian soldiers, gone home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Від стрия до волновахи і чутно кличе, дітям нахуй, тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Gone home, Russian soldiers, gone home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Від стрия до волновахи і чутно кличе, дітям нахуй, тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Gone home, Russian soldiers, gone home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Від стрия до волновахи і чутно кличе, дітям нахуй, тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО.
Идите нахуй!